So obviously the first thing you want to do is measure your head. You don't want your hat to be the wrong size, right? This is the material we have chosen. This is my eldest daughter's favorite color, and this is the kind of material I like to use for these hats. It's a taffeta. Taffeta has a good bit of hand, which means stiffness, and as you can see, it holds shape really well. That means I have to go iron this first though. And now that it's ironed, I am going to measure a piece of twine that is the same as the circumference of the head that I measured, and then I'm going to add an extra inch. So that means it's going to be a 24-inch piece. I'm also going to cut a second piece of twine, and it's going to be about 30 inches long. The longer piece I'm going to tie onto my pen like this, and I'm going to anchor it at the top of my fabric, and using that anchor as my pivot point, I'm going to draw a curve. Now that piece of twine I cut, that was the circumference of the head plus an inch. I'm just using that to kind of make sure that I made my curve big enough. That's really what that's for. I have fancy rulers for this, but I don't think everybody does, so I'm showing you a different method. Then we just want to cut along this line. Once we get to the end, we're going to cut just a little bit past our measurement point, and then we're just going to cut straight up to the top. It's just a lot easier to deal with a smaller piece of fabric is the thinking here. After it's cut out, we're going to fold it in half, and we want the curved end to be together. As you can see, that the end where we drew the line and cut along the curve, I'm matching that up right now at the bottom. Now a lot of this stuff isn't going to be perfect, and that is fine because in the end, the way this hat turns out, it's not a huge deal. In fact, right here, I'm about to make a mistake cutting. You'll see me have to fix this later. Regardless, we're going to start down here at the bottom, and basically we're going to cut kind of a triangle shape, starting with the wider part being the curve we made at the bottom. The mistake I just made was accidentally cutting off part of the measured out curve, which is the circumference, so I'm going to have to add fabric in a bit. Luckily it's easy peasy, and I'll show you. So now that we've got this roughly triangular, I really want to kind of refine the shape a little bit. Again, I'm just going to use what I have on hand. So I'm going to use this piece of twine to kind of make sure I've got more of a straight line, and I want that top to be thinner. For the next step, I'm going to use that piece of twine that I used for my head circumference again. I want a piece of fabric that is double that length, and I'm going to quarter it over like this. So basically fold in half, then fold in half again. And now with the shorter string tied on, I'm going to do the exact same thing as before. I'm going to use that corner where everything comes together as my pivot point, and I'm going to just draw the circle with my marker gently. I'm not pressing down very hard. I don't want a super harsh line. I just need a little bit of a line. And again, I'm going to keep saying this, don't stress about everything turning out perfect. You're not going to be able to tell in the end. So after that, you're going to have this nice circle. This is going to be our hat brim. Well, let's just pretend I never unfolded it though. Now that we have this circle, I'm going to just use a regular measuring tape, and I'm going to make little dashes every 3 inches, again using that corner as my pivot point. And this is kind of going to be just like a follow the dotted line thing. 3 inches is going to make a hole smaller than the 23 inches I need for the head circumference, and that's perfect. We don't want the hole to be as big or bigger than the head circumference. Smaller is good, that's what we want. So this is what we have. When we put this together, we're going to cut little dashes all along that. You'll see. Now for the hat brim, I like to use a stiff material. I have this really stiff interfacing and also some stiff craft foam. Either one of these will work. I'm going to go with the interfacing on this hat just because it's a light color and I'm afraid this black craft foam will show through. Seems like no matter how I measured it though, I couldn't quite get it right. So what I'm going to do is cut 2 different pieces and glue them together to make a piece long enough. I'm making the hat brim 2 inches wide or tall. You'll see what I mean. Here, just watch. Sometimes my words are not good. So I'm measuring that first piece I cut out to see how much more I need. And you want to have a little bit of overlap, so I'm doing extra than what I need. Now I'm just going to glue these guys together. Measuring again and making some marks so I know exactly where to glue these pieces together to get the right size of hat brim or hat band. Yeah, that's what that is. And see, I'm just gonna line it up when I glue it. This way I'll get the right size. This part is the only part that it's really crucial you actually do get fairly accurate, is the hat size. You don't want it too loose or too tight, you know. I'm starting out with the wire I had on hand, and it's like 22 gauge copper wire. I'm going to cut a piece that's almost as long as this triangle, just a little bit shy of it. And I want 3 pieces like that. You can just use the first one to measure the second 2. Once you get your 3 pieces cut, you're going to want to twist the top inch to 3/4 of an inch of the wires together. And then kind of spread out the wires a little bit. You want them sort of in triangle formation. With the twisted together part at the very tip, you're going to glue that down. I suggest gluing this part down really, really well because you don't want those wires to poke through. I'm sorry, you can hear my cat chewing boxes in the background. She wants attention. Now though, we're just going to glue these wires down. You want to glue them down securely, so you want to have a nice layer, but you don't want it to be a fat layer of glue. You want to kind of smooth it out. See how I'm kind of like rubbing the tip of my glue gun against it? I want a nice thin layer, but I want it to completely coat the wire and go to either side of the wire onto the cloth a little bit. And you want to glue down the other 2 wires just the same. You want a configuration like this. Everybody nice and secure, but nothing too thick and, you know, where it's going to be hard to bend it later. Here is where I realize I made that mistake earlier. So I'm just going to take a piece of scrap cloth and add a little bit extra. This part's really better just seen visually than having me try to explain it. You'll see exactly what I'm doing here. Again, keep your glue nice and thin. You want it to be plenty to hold on, but you don't want big gloopy globs. So see, even people who do this stuff all the time, we make mistakes. You just do your best to fix it and keep rolling. And now it fits around the hat band. Success! So after you decide what's going to be the front of the hat band, which is the less bulky part for me, I'm just going to start gluing that onto this triangle at the bottom of the curve. I'm going to start here in the middle, and you want to leave a little bit of cloth hanging below. You can't really see it from the angle I'm at, but there's a little bit of cloth hanging towards me. I'll show you a better shot of that in just a bit. Once we get to this point in the hat, we don't want that raw edge. So what we're gonna do is just fold this over, and luckily this thing takes a crease well, this fabric takes a crease well, so it's kind of easy to do exactly what you see me doing here, and it kind of gives you a guide point. So folding it over as we go, we're gonna glue that down. We're obviously going for a cone shape, you know, like the top of a witch's hat. Just keep checking your lines as you go and you will be fine. And make sure you're pressing, as you see me doing here, from the inside and the outside. That gives you a nice secure hold. When you get to the very tip, make sure everything's rolled into a nice little point and that no wires are sticking out. You should have something like this. So there's one part done, at least, you know, the base part done. Now, I decided I wanted some stronger wire, so I went out and bought this wire the next day. This is 18 gauge aluminum wire, still nice and malleable, but it has a lot more, I don't know, it holds its shape better. It's stronger. And I decided I wanted to add just a couple of strips of this inside the hat afterwards, like into the cone part, which you can see me doing right here. All I'm doing is adding some glue to these stronger pieces of wire and kind of putting them between those pieces of copper wire. And they're not going all the way to the tip because that would be ridiculous to finagle hot glue into. So it's only about, I don't know, halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way up, as far as I could get it without the hot glue becoming a hassle. And now the next step is taking that same wire and we're going to glue it all the way around the outside edge of this hat brim. And that's what's going to hold your hat brim out and make it where you can shape it. Without this part, it would all just like hang in your face like a weird veil. Again, keep your glue nice and thin, but do it all the way around. Keep as close to the edge as you can. Here's that little lip of fabric I was telling you about earlier. What we're going to do is just fold it up just like this and glue it down inside the hat brim, all the way around. And now to put the pieces together. I'm just eyeballing this. Again, I'm not worrying about it being perfection. I just want to make sure that the cone part of the hat sits over the hole enough that there's no weird places hanging out. You don't want any gaps is the main thing. You don't want half the hole hanging out the back side because that's going to be hard to fix. But this is why having the smaller hole makes this a lot easier. After you get your alignment about where you like it, you're gonna start gluing it down. I'm starting on the back side of the hat. I know you can't see what I'm doing. In a second, I'll turn it around where you have a better view. Some of this stuff is real hard to do in a way that you guys can see what I'm doing. So here we go. I'm turning it around. I've just tacked down the back, like I said, and now I'm going to run a good bead of glue around the bottom edge of the cone and smooth out the brim of the hat as I go and just glue it down to it. And this is what you have at this point. It's, you know, good enough now. If you wanted to stop here and you didn't care about the exposed wire, you'd be fine. I do care about the exposed wire. This is some double fold bias tape, and just a second I'll show you how that looks. You can find it in craft stores, usually near the zippers and stuff. It kind of opens up like this, and it's flexible. It goes around corners really well. It's what it's good for. So we're going to use it to go all the way around the hat brim and hide that wire. I'm just hot gluing it on. First, I'm hot gluing it kind of in the middle part, like I'm trying to glue right where that little crease is, right along the wire. I'm gluing that first, and I'm not gluing down the top and bottom flaps. That might not make a lot of sense, but if you watch what I'm doing, you'll see what I mean. So now we're going to start gluing down the flaps. You just need a thin bead kind of right at the edge. You don't need to like fully goop these up with glue. Again, you don't want to make your hat heavy and weird and unflexible with hot glue. As I'm gluing the flaps down, you'll see I kind of do a pushing up and in motion, and that's just to kind of help it lay flat. Now on the inside of the hat, where that hole is too small, and you can see it didn't line up perfect, some of it's bigger than the others, what you do is just go around and do these little cuts like this, and then just glue those down inside the hat brim, just like you're seeing me doing. Don't worry if it's pretty, nobody's gonna see this part. I mean, I guess if you are worried about it being pretty, you could add something later. Also, when you get to the end of the binding tape, I should have put this is out of order. Anyway, fold this piece at the end, because again, you don't want a raw edge, and then just glue it down like that. And this is just me gluing the top side of the flap down. And trying to do it where you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. One of these days, I really need to invest in like more than one camera, I think. And if you want a plain hat, obviously you could stop right here. But me? No, never a plain hat. We gotta add some of this stuff. I've got lace, ribbons, moss, lily pads, frogs, turtles, all kinds of stuff. This hat is for my eldest daughter. I think I said that earlier in the video. Anyway, she wanted it to be Swamp Witch themed, so we got stuff to match that theme. You can do any theme. You can put whatever you want on there. Speaking of themes, here's my on-theme coffee cup and my absinthe spoon, but coffee is cheaper than absinthe and I probably shouldn't drink that while I'm crafting anyway, so coffee. Now I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do the like hat band part, because I suggest you use just a plain wide ribbon like this. Don't try to get it super fancy. And before you start gluing anything on, as far as decorations, I also recommend you do a little bit of fidgeting around with the layout before you commit to something you're going to be sad about later. So here I'm just kind of trying to decide what I want where. Again, starting in the back of the hat, I'm going to start putting on this hat band, which is just a piece of really stiff ribbon. It's not anything special for the most part. I'm going to be covering this almost completely. I just need it to be there to help pull the colors together and to add just a little bit of extra. It also helps hide that interfacing band we've got that kind of is the support of the hat. And I really, want to hide that. Also here, I'm just running an extra bead of glue along this edge where the hat comes together, just for reinforcement. It's going to be covered. Doesn't matter if the glue shows, so I'm going for it. Putting this band on is pretty straightforward. Mostly you just want to make sure it goes all the way flush to where the hat and the brim come together. And I'm sticking one hand inside and one hand outside to push it together just to make sure it adheres really well. Same trick as before to hide raw edges, just fold it over. Now it comes together a little bit weird, so I'm just gonna cut off where it hangs down onto the brim. I do recommend ruffled lace because ruffles follow curves better. If you use just a regular lace, you're gonna have a time. And I don't mean a good time. So figure out which side is right side up on your lace. And again, I'm folding over the raw edge before I start. And making sure I have right side up, I'm just going to glue this all the way around right at the base of where the top of the hat and the hat brim come together. Again, not being super careful because I'm going to be piling a lot of stuff in this area, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. And I'm just going to kind of seal the lace together so it doesn't, flap apart weirdly in the wind or anything. And now I'm going to put some lace all around the edges. I decided to do this green lace right at the very edge of the hat. Just kind of going slowly, and I'm only putting glue right on that little band of the ruffly part. And this is cheap lace, and it gets kind of wrinkly on the roll. Just kind of pull it like you see me doing here, and that'll help pull out the wrinkles. I'm going to add a wider piece of black lace. Again, just putting my glue right on the top little band of the lace and lining that up with the top edge of the interfacing. And this does a pretty good job of hiding the interfacing. Also, it just looks really cute, all the ruffles. Now we're just going to speed it up, and I'm going to shut my mouth, and this part, you know what? Do what you want for this next part. This is the decorating part. This is the fun. Go crazy. Go nuts. Do what you want to do. I also just realized you can probably hear my kid yelling at video games in the background. My apologies. There's all the noise in my house today. I made this red hat a few years ago and this green hat today. I don't know why my camera is making it all look so choppy. I don't know. I'll show you some good stills at the end. Please make sure you like and subscribe while you're here though. And squeaking in just under the wire, that was my Halloween video. Luckily, since it was last minute, this is also a last minute kind of project. You can do this in 2, 3, maybe 4 hours if you want to get super extravagant, which, not naming names, but some people I know are like that. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I would love to see pictures if you guys make hats, because, I mean, these are so extra anime, wonderful witchy time hats, and I just love them. I love them. I know, I'm sitting here tooting my own horn and sounding like, oh, I
I love the stuff I make.
But I do, or I wouldn't keep doing it. I mean, what would be the point if I didn't like what I make? Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy it too. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Halloween. Even if circumstances aren't ideal this year, I hope everybody gets out, has fun, and enjoys my favorite holiday. See you guys. When I see you guys, I'm going to stop saying next weekend because we all know it's not true. Bye. And here are those stills I told you I would show you. Go out and make yourself some dang hats, people, and make sure you send me some dang pictures. Happy Halloween, y'all!